Hello, I'm Elizabeth Filippouli. Over the next 4 weeks, we will be taking a look at the changing face of Europe. Some experts estimate that there are 50 million Muslims living on the European continent. The sound of Arabic, the sight of mosques and markets are no longer unusual in countries previously known for the lack of racial and religious diversity. In our first part, we take a look at Sweden's third largest city, Malmo. Malmo is home to 50,000 Muslims from Iraq, Iran and the Horn of Africa. If demographic trends continue, it will become the first major Scandinavian city with a Muslim majority. Filmmaker Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy spent time in one of the poorest parts of the city, an area called Rosengard. She gives us a snapshot of a changing country.
Sweden, known the world over for being one of the most developed post-industrial societies. Swedes enjoy an advanced welfare system. Their standard of living and life expectancy are among the best in the world. But some Swedes say their country is rapidly changing and not for the better. They say immigrants, especially Muslim immigrants, have become a burden on their society and are altering their country's core identity. In the 1970s, Sweden adopted a liberal immigration policy, taking in refugees fleeing oppressive regimes and war-torn areas. They came from countries like Iran, Palestine, Iraq and Afghanistan. Muslims particularly gravitated to Sweden because of its reputation as a welcoming and tolerant Western society. Today, more than 250,000 Muslims live in Sweden. And in the country's third largest city, Malmo, things are heating up. Some experts predict that in the next 20 years, it could become the first Scandinavian city with a Muslim majority population. I've come to Rosengard, a housing project 10 minutes from downtown Malmo. Over 20,000 immigrants call this area home. It is one of the poorest and most welfare-dependent neighborhoods in the country. Unemployment among immigrants here is as high as 90%. Second-generation Muslims growing up in Rosengard feel lost. They have one foot in their parents' world and the other in the more Western Swedish society.
So they said, okay, do some freestyle about football.
Perang Amiri was born in Iran, but raised here in Rosengard. The 22-year-old is an activist who uses rap to inspire young Muslims to better their lives.
The first immigrants that came to Sweden, they got work immediately. Most of them came from Greece, Italy, former Yugoslavia. During the 80s and 90s and during the 2000s, the refugees arrived, and they were placed here. And that's why we can see that the neighborhood today, Rosengard, from being a working-class neighborhood, is now a neighborhood for refugees and immigrants, people who came from war. We have 150 different nationalities, while in the other parts of Malmo or Sweden, they only have 1 or 2 nationalities. So this is the welcome to the most multicultural neighborhood in Sweden.
Most Swedes never venture into this part of town. They think it is far too dangerous to walk these streets, and this is why. These are the images they see on television of Rosengard. Arson attacks at the local mosque, police on patrol with dogs, fire brigades and ambulances needing police protection, violence breaking out everywhere.
The folks that are shaped into the integration policy, because some hold what is sacred, such as tradition, dishes, pictures, the initial of the issue, which nationalism. I'm asking for missions by massive commissions of pathos and vicious, of react to things that are mentioned. Christmas and midsummer, Eid al-Nowruz and Ramadan. Am I supposed to dance around a tree while y'all don't give a damn about our fight?
I accompanied Perang to his studio, where he was recording his first album.
When you're a little kid, you're not thinking about who you are, like nationality. When I became 10, 11, 12, I started to look in the mirror and I started to feel strange, you know. You watch TV and you only see white people and people with the names such as Sven and Anders. You never see people with the names Behran, Reza or Mohammed. So who am I? I put the blame on the leaders of this nation that they don't use our abilities. Immigrants are giving life of the working carpet. We're coming here with new food culture, with new ideas of business, new ideas of interacting. We're changing the Swedish society to the better. But when they don't use our abilities, people get mad and they go into the shells. So they have a lot of frustration in the body, especially the kids. The kids are already stamped as criminals. Look at the television, look at the mass media, the magazine. They're already stamped as a criminal.
Outside Rosengard, some politicians are exploiting the tensions between immigrants and native Swedes to gain votes in the upcoming elections.
Tusentals invandrare och springa och försörja, för det finns ju inte jobb åt oss själv.
Det har inte tillkommit ett enda nytt.
I met up with members of the Sweden Democrats who were busy handing out flyers at the local bus station. They are a right-wing anti-immigration party, and while they command a small base in Swedish politics, their support has grown dramatically in recent years.
How do you view a Swede? In your opinion, what is a Swede?
It's a part of the Swedish culture, a part of the Christianity. It's very important. You can't be a practiced Muslim and come to Sweden and think that you could have the right to have your own laws or your own mosques.
What would you do about problems in areas like Rosengard?
I think the first thing we have to do is to stop the multicultural system.
Is that down there?
Yeah.
The next afternoon, I headed to the main mosque at the edge of Rosengard. It has borne the brunt of tensions between Muslims and Swedes. It has been burnt down once, firebombed twice, and after one attack, the head of a pig was found inside. No arrests have been made. More than 50,000 Muslims live in Malmo, and on this Friday, the mosque was packed with worshippers. Afterwards, Midhat Ibrahim took me inside to show me the damage from the latest attack.
Up to the burnt place.
Midhat migrated to Sweden from Kosovo in 1952 and helped build the mosque.
Why do you think that these attacks keep happening to this mosque?
It's hard to say. The police haven't found anyone. We've been trying to figure out who did this. Because this is the house of God. We don't know for sure, but we think it's extremist groups, like Nazis and white supremacists.
Absolut inte garantera. No, det finns extrema grupper dessa.
Do you think that Islam limits Muslims to fully integrate themselves into a Western society like Sweden?
Yes, jag tror att muslimer kan.
I think Muslims can integrate. Assimilation, no. Integration, yes. The problem is that Christians don't know much about Islam. Muslims know much more about Christianity and Judaism.
Before I left, he cautioned me about the growing gulf between young Muslims and native Swedes.
Vissa naturligtvis här tar billiga poäng att anklaga.
Many people accuse Islam, and young Muslims have had enough. The conflict starts because young Muslims want to defend Islam. They want Swedes to know they are not terrorists. It's ignorance about Islam that breeds conflict.
Young Muslim women in Sweden have their own set of problems. They have to balance their religious beliefs with the expectations of Western society. That evening in Rosengard, I met two sisters, Yasmin and Arij. They grew up in the neighborhood and were now attending high school with hopes of one day becoming doctors.
Tell me how difficult it is to cover your head in Sweden.
It becomes quite difficult because people stared at you and asked you very, very stupid questions like, do you shower your hair? Did your mom and dad force you to wear your scarf? Or why do you have it? Do you have hair underneath? Yeah. And all that. It was very stupid question and it was irritating. Yeah, they don't...
These young women had benefited from having parents who encouraged them to learn Swedish and befriend Swedes. Others were not as lucky.
The parents, they don't raise their children good because they're just sitting at home and watch TV on Arabic news, and they don't care about the Swedish society. They only care about how it is in their own country. So they don't care about the children, what they do. Sometimes the children is out to 2 in the morning and just
they don't know what to do.
Crashing in windows out there and destroying things.
Do you have friends who have conflict with their parents because...
Yeah, of course,
lots of them.
Yeah.
But still, you see girls when they come to school, they wear the scarf. And then when they come, they take it off, put on some makeup. It's just because their parents are really forcing them.
And there's many girls that aren't allowed to go out and just play football or hang out with friends outside the house. It's affected them a lot because when they're home, they want to do stuff, but their parents is like, no, no, no. And then when they...
These were young practicing Muslims, yet they saw no conflict between their religion and the country they now called home.
When we return, appealing to the lost youth of Rosengard, Crossroads Europe will continue. Stay with us.